Dan works in sport and exercise science, and really looking forward to his session on engaging and assessing students. So Dan, we've got 10 minutes for your presentation. I'll give you a bell with 2 minutes to go. Over to you.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so thanks for joining me for the presentation today. A little bit different to how I might normally give a conference presentation. That silence beforehand certainly doesn't help kind of settle any nerves in that respect. So my session today, as Andy just said, is about engaging, assessing students through the development of digital content brought around because of the situation that we found ourselves in the last 12 months. But that situation certainly has changed things within the context of what we've been doing. So I'll kind of be touching upon that a little bit. So kind of just three aims of the presentation. The first one is just to talk a little bit about the use of flexible approaches to the delivery of curriculum and the use of applied assessments, and then providing an example of how student dissemination and communication in one of my modules can be assessed, and obviously we've had to change that over the course of the last 12 months. And then thinking about, well, what might that actually look like in a blended and online world, and the way that we might look to change our assessments and things. So the context of which this sort of sets up is that you know, we have our students and they transition and develop through their education, and what comes with that is that students become immersed in their subject, and the module that I'm talking about today is a postgraduate module. So over time they become more immersed and they develop a lot of different aspects alongside of that. So they develop a cultural language, lots of technical terms, jargon, acronyms that they slowly become desensitized to, if you like, within the environment they're working in. And they develop a lens through which to assess their environment and their culture and their subject. And we also pick up lots of academic conventions. But in the broad context, students need to be able to communicate their discipline to intended audiences and be able to really differentiate their approaches depending upon who they're working with. So for us, that might be people within sports science, that might be a fellow coach or an athlete, or that might actually be trying to disseminate information from a research point of view as well. So we want to try and develop our students, and when we created the MSc Sports Science, one of the modules we decided to develop was a module that actually, rather than assessing the discipline specific knowledge and content, was actually to look at, can we assess the students and help them become better practitioners and better facilitators in actually disseminating the knowledge and understanding they have of the subject area. And what we came up with was that we actually wanted the students to be able to conduct, prepare, plan and deliver a workshop to an applied audience, whether that be sport athletes, coaches, maybe even students from A-level GCSE kind of background. And we got a lot of buy-in from the local community around that, and we've been running these modules for a long time now. So the module delivery works with the students to evaluate and develop those kind of necessary skills. So we're kind of going into the pedagogical content of actually how do we deliver material as well. And the assessment, when we originally created it, was through delivery of a workshop and an individual reflection by the students. So that's the kind of the context and the module and the way that we've kind of worked things. So pre-COVID, we were looking to organise and deliver face-to-face workshops to coaches or athletes, and they worked very well, and the students were on board with kind of engaging those individual aspects. And then, as I said, there was a reflective blog around that. So back in March 2020, we had planned, and the student cohort there had developed workshops and things to be able to deliver that. And obviously COVID hit and we couldn't have the face-to-face content. So we had to come up with a different way in which we could communicate the knowledge and sports science content. And we did that through a development of some online modules using Microsoft Sway, and the students developed kind of a multi-modal content with videos and images and tasks and things within that. If I get a chance at the end of the workshop, I'll kind of bring it up, but it'll mean that I've kind of got to come out of the presentation and back in, which isn't great. So thinking ahead to this year, we're still in the same situation. So we wanted to think about how can we develop this a little bit further? What can we do that is going to facilitate and help our students kind of moving forward? So we're in the process at the moment of setting up online workshops to athletes and students, and each of my groups this year are doing something slightly different. But then what we also wanted to do is think about ways in which we might be able to disseminate that kind of knowledge through applied sort of situations and developing blog posts that we could actually put out to the sports science community and for people wanting to gain kind of knowledge and understanding in that manner. So the way I assess the students then is to kind of think about actually assessing them delivering the workshop. So not necessarily just on the discipline content information, but actually to kind of look at their ability to disseminate information around their specific area that they're wanting to work on, and then also to look at the other aspects of organising and presenting the information, the communication of it. And then this year we're looking at those individual web posts as well, that we're working with the digital team as to ways in which we can develop the students' content. So what I think that has had a resulting effect, whilst there is great benefit from having those face-to-face workshops and things, and I think that's probably something that we'll still retain. I think there's a lot of the digital content that we can still bring in, and I tried to create a little bit of a list about what's the skill development for the students in relation to the use of this module, and you can kind of see there. So there's still developing their discipline specific knowledge without me necessarily actually kind of going into that. They're developing their understanding and engagement with it. They're developing presentation skills, being able to integrate use of Poll Everywhere, Kahoot, online quizzes, and they're developing and presenting written sports science content in a manner that's actually maybe putting them into a shop window, so to speak, and actually being able to sort of develop their own sort of style and understanding of things within their discipline. Multiple use of lots of different platforms, Collaborate, Teams, WordPress, Adobe Spark. We're also getting into the pedagogical content of teaching and learning, developing organisation skills, and also confidence in presenting. So just to finish up with then, so what's the effect on the future of blended learning? Well, it's forced us to reevaluate our approaches and to change the assessment and the mode in which we're doing it. So we've got some nice use of assessment methods that are, as I say, not the traditional essay work that we might associate with working, but actually trying to think a bit more innovatively about that, and trying to create innovative approaches to that development and communication of discipline knowledge. And we've obviously got that digital skill development of the student required for employment as a graduate, and all those different skills that they've been able to use and develop that perhaps we wouldn't have got within a physiology or a biomechanics module. So that's I think probably just about time.
Yeah, pretty much spot on. Okay, so just want to give thank you first of all. Can you just move on to the last slide so that people can see the summary information? But just want to thank you first. A very interesting presentation. Is there any questions from the group that they may want to raise? It's been a very quiet group at the moment. Ellie's asked a question: how do you ensure or monitor each student in a group contributes equally?
Well, that's something that we kind of worked on in the past, and in terms of we've tried to take a very sort of collective approach amongst the student body, and generally I think most of the students contribute equally, and I've never had a situation where we haven't had students kind of, or I guess I've never had a situation where students have said, well, actually, I'm not happy in the way that this is kind of being shared. But obviously within the workshop itself, we're looking to kind of assess the sort of individual aspects of how each student works and communicates with the audience.
Okay, thank you. And I've got a question here from Sally. Hello, Sally, a blast from the past. Have you encountered any issues with requiring students to submit SWAY for assessment? Any concerns about ensuring that the deadline is adhered to if the SWAY link is submitted?
Well, SWAY obviously we used last year as a mode to kind of help with our communication and being able to still deliver upon the module learning outcomes, and that is a concern in terms of the size of the cohort I was working with was quite small, and I was able to police that quite manageably. In other modules where I've looked to do that, we've had to kind of look at other methods because of that ability that you can't actually sort of close down and have a submission point. So that is something that is a difficult.